Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kurtiwada. In this video, we will learn about lazy components and how we can achieve that lazy loading in our React. So let me go into one more slide where we will discuss what we'll cover in this video. So I want to cover the technique, how we can use this lazy components and how it improves the performance of our application on initial load. And also we use lazy loading components which loads the components on demand basis, and we can make only sections of components to a lazy loading component. And also we will use some set of suspense fallbacks, and we will make this as a placeholder while the component is getting loaded. And these are the scenarios which we will cover in this video. So let me quickly jump into Visual Studio Code to understand this in with an example. So let me remove all this code, which is a default code, and I want to give a h1 tag where it is telling you that React lazy components. So now what I want to do is I want to create two components, that is odd component and even component. So let me go here and create a new file called as odd.js, and let me create a new file called as even.js. So I'll go into the odd.js rfce snippet, which will create a React functional component. Again, rfce for even number. So I have created the even component. Let me save this. Now what I want to do is I want to go into app.js. Let me create a state called as is even and set is even. So I want to put some set of values, and let me use state of 0. So I'm just using a even number. Let me rename it as even and even, or let me rename it as a number and set number. So I want to update this number, and whenever my number, that is nothing but when the number is divisible by 2 and the remainder is 0, then you have to get an even number, that is nothing but even. And whenever it is not divisible by 2, you have to get the odd number. And by default you have 0, which is divisible by 2, and hence you should get the even number. Now let me go here and create a button which will help us to toggle this even and odd numbers. So update number, and let me show that with on click, and I'll update with an event, and the event is set number. It will take my previous number plus 1. So let me save this. Now what I'll do is I'll show that particular number somewhere like paragraph, and I want to show this as a number hyphen and number, and save this. Go here. Now you can see the number, and by default it is loading that even component, because by default the value of number is 0. So 0 is divisible by 2, and hence it is showing even number. So let me inspect this. Now let me go into the source file. So we'll see what are the files loaded for this application. If you go into this local one, okay, let me go into source, and you can see there are files which has been loaded which are unwanted. For now I didn't click on anything, and you are not having any number with odd. That means odd number is also loaded without any usage. And even even.js also loaded. Why? Because it is 0 and it has to load to show this particular component. App.js is a default one, so it has to load. App.css, it is a default one which has to load. But here the unused JS file is odd.js, which we don't need until the user clicks on this particular update number. That means it is not loading on demand basis. Instead, it is loading for the first instance itself. Consider a situation where you have hundreds of components with hundreds of files, and you are trying to load them on the initial stage, and you are using only 5 to 6 components on the initial stage. Then why to load all that 95 components which are not used in the initial load? So that is where we came across a technique called as lazy loading. Lazy loading helps us to load the components on demand basis. Whenever it is required, it will load. Otherwise, it will not load. Let me show you that. For example, now you got this event directly by importing here. What I'll do is I'll not use this import directly. Instead, what I'll do, I'll use something like const even, okay, and I want to import with a lazy. So lazy, and you have to import with a callback function. So this lazy will take a callback function. With that callback function, you have to import it. So dot slash, and it is even. So now this is an even component, and let me refresh this with a odd as well. Odd is equal to lazy, and you will be getting a callback function where you have to import this particular odd component. So odd component. And here you can give odd as capital letter because we are using like an HTML element. Let me remove this as well. And instead of using odd of direct import, now we are using the lazy import. Let me save this. Now let's understand how it works. First thing, whenever your application gets loaded, the state is 0 and hence 0 is divisible by 2 and hence you will be able to see the even number. That means even will be loaded on the first instance. That is the demand of this even component is on the load itself. So it has to load and it will load. Now let me go here. We are seeing some problem, a component suspended while responding to the synchronous input. This is because by the time it is loaded, the UI is not having any of the content, so that's why it is showing this problem. So what we can do is we can use something like suspense component. So suspense component help us to avoid this type of problems. So let me add a suspense, and you have a property called as fallback, and you can write any of the fallback inside this. So let me go with h1 loading dot dot dot, and let me put this suspense at the bottom. So let me format this. So whenever the component is not ready, then this fallback will be called and it will show on the UI. Let me save this, and you can see, let me refresh. So you will be seeing that loading a fraction of second, but I'll show you that as well. First target is what are the components loaded on the initial stage. It has to load only even. That is what the lazy loading technique which we have implemented. Let me go here, open the source, and you can see only even.js. It didn't load odd.js because it is not required on the UI. Now what I'll do is I'll click on update number. Now the number became 1 and you got this odd number and it is loaded now. And if you go to the network, it will also load the same way. So let me clear this off and let me click this. Now already two components has been loaded, so it will not reload or not regenerate that particular component. Instead, when you refresh this, you can see an even file which is a chunk. So it will create all the chunks and different files. So now even is called. Let me clear this off and clear this off. Let me click on odd. That means odd chunk has been loaded. So whenever you update that number, it is trying to get the odd component on demand basis. So that is how you can load and how this suspense and fallback will work. So what I'll do is I'll change this network to slow 3G because you have to load that particular chunk very slowly. So let me refresh this, and first time it takes time. So you can see the loading, and now app component is loaded, and then you got the whole data. That means all the imports has been clearly loaded, and that is why you are seeing this lazy component now. What will happen when I click on number? So when I click on update number, the number will change to 1, and once it creates as 1, it tries to call the odd chunk, that is odd component, and odd component may take some time to load onto your UI. So by the time it will show the fallback. Let's see that. So let me click on this. Now it is taking some time and now it loaded. Till the time it is loaded, we are showing the fallback component. Let me click again, or let me refresh this and show you that once first time you are seeing loading, and when I click on the button again you are seeing loading until this chunk is loaded. So once the chunk is loaded, fallback will be removed and actual UI will be shown on the screen. So that is how you can improve the performance. You can feel like how it will improve the performance and what is the strategy behind the scenes. It is very simple. When you are going with the large scale applications, you will be having n number of components. All the components, if you are trying to load at a time on the initial load, then it takes some time to download all the unwanted files in the background in the network, and it takes lot of time and it decreases the performance of your application. That is where you have to use a lazy components, and this lazy components will help us to load on demand basis. So whenever it has a demand, it will load, and whenever you don't have any used components, then it will not load. So that improves our application's performance. And once the application requirements or application JS files are loaded, it will not regenerate it. Instead, it will use which already loaded. For example, first time even has been loaded and next odd has been loaded. And if you try change these numbers again, it will not reload or it will not regenerate this even component. Instead, it will use the same one. So only for the first time on demand basis only this helps us. So that is about your lazy components in React, and this is the way how we can implement lazy components in React. And this increases your application performance a lot. Hope that's it for this video. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my explanation, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.